Hello there friends, it's Ashley here from the Loopy Lamb and theloopylamb.com, and thanks so much for stopping by the channel. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to make my textured twist crochet headband. Now, this is a really fun pattern. It plays with colors and it's a lot easier than it looks. So to follow along with today's tutorial, you're going to need the following materials. You're going to need a 5mm or H crochet hook, or whatever size hook that you need to match the gauge given in the pattern. Today's gauge is 16 stitches by 14 rows equals 4 inches. And if you need information on how to create a gauge swatch, and I have a written out gauge swatch for you on the blog, theloopylamb.com, with the ad-supported free version of this pattern. You're also going to need some DK weight yarn, and the amount that you're going to need will vary by the size that you're making, and you'll be able to make the toddler through adult large size with this video. You can also make the baby sizes that are available. However, you're going to need the chain amounts from the written version of the pattern that you can find on the blog. And again, I'm adding the link to that in the description box for you below. For your DK weight yarn here, I'm using Wonderland Yarns. It's a beautiful hand-dyed yarn here, and I've got two different samples. In this sample here in the toddler size, I used the color Gyre and Wildflower, and then in the other sample here, I used the color Curiouser and Cobweb. I'm going to be making the adult medium size in the video today, and I use 66 yards of my color A, which is the Curiouser, and 47 yards of my color B. And you can find all the yardage broken down in the free version of the pattern on the blog. You're also going to need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, and a stitch marker or two. It's optional. It's just that I'm going to share a couple of tips with you that can make crocheting this pattern even easier. All right, so let's hop into crocheting our textured twist crochet headband, and I'll clean off my workspace here and we'll start crocheting. All right, to start our headband, we're going to need to create a slip knot, and we're going to pick the main color of our headband. For me here, it's this beautiful teal color, and we're going to lay the tail end across our palm. Then we'll pin that tail down with our thumb, and then grabbing the working end of the yarn, we're going to wrap it around behind our fingers, bring it around to the front, and then cross it over itself to create an X like this. Now, while we maintain tension on the working yarn, we're going to flip our non-dominant hand over, bringing the yarn with us so it lays across the top of our hand, and then you're going to pin the yarn down with our pinky finger. Then grab your crochet hook, and we're going to insert our hook under the first strand and over the second. Then we're going to pull that second strand under the first, and then while we're pulling with our hook, we're going to remove our fingers and then pull down on the yarn tails and up on the hook to tighten our slip knot. Then if you grab the working end of your yarn, you can bring that slip knot up to your crochet hook and you're ready to start crocheting. You want to make sure it's not too tight. If it is, you can pull down on the working yarn, the tail there to loosen it, and the working yarn will tighten it. It needs to be able to move freely. So now we're ready to start our headband. Now, the amount of chain you're going to need for your size will vary. I'm making the adult medium size right now, so I'm going to be starting with a chain of 86. And so this video is covering sizes toddler through adult size large. And if you're wanting the baby sizes, they're available to view for free in the written version of the pattern over on my ad-supported blog at theloopylamb.com, and I've linked that in the description for you below. I'm going to start with a chain of 86, and I'll ask you to pause in just a moment here to get the number of chains you need to start with for your size. All right, to start our chain, we're going to yarn over hook and pull that yarn through the loop on our hook. That's our first chain created. Then we're going to do that again. We're going to yarn over and pull the yarn through the loop on our hook, and that's another chain created. Every time we do this yarn over and pull through the loop on our hook, that creates another chain. So we're going to count each time we move that yarn through the loop as one chain. So if you'd like to pause your video and finish your chain for your desired size, I'll be right back when I'm ready to move on to working row 1, and I have 86 chains. All right, so I'm back and I have my 86 chains for the adult medium size. And if you're not familiar with how to count your chains, you want to turn your chain so that way you see this V facing you. If you see these little bumps, you're looking at the back of the chain. So you want to turn it so you can see these V's, and you can count from this first chain here. We never count the yarn on our hook as a chain, and we can count from this first chain over to the slip knot, or from the slip knot back to this first chain, and just to make sure that you have the correct amount of chains. Now, if you want to adjust the size of this pattern, you're going to just want to create a foundation chain of an even number. All right, so now we're moving into row 1, and row 1's really simple. We're going to work a half double crochet into each chain across. So we never work into that first chain, and we're going to start in this second chain here. So we're going to yarn over and insert our hook into that second chain from the hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And that's your first half double crochet completed. And we'll do that again. Yarn over and insert into the next chain, yarn over and pull up a loop. 3 loops on your hook, then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. All right, again, yarn over into the next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. All right, we'll do this one more time together. Yarn over, insert into the next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And we're just going to continue to work 1 half double crochet into each chain across. So if you'd like to pause your video now and meet me back here at the end of the row, I'll finish my row up here and I'll meet you back here to show you how we move into row 2. All right, so I just finished my last stitch of row 1 and I'm moving into row 2. And to start row 2, we're going to yarn over and pull the yarn through the loop on our hook to create a chain 1. That's our turning chain, and then we're going to turn our work. And so now the wrong side of the fabric is facing us. So now we're going to work a half double crochet into that very first stitch. So we're going to yarn over and insert our hook under both loops of that first stitch there, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And that's our first stitch completed. Now, if you have stitch markers, I find sometimes with half double crochets, they tend to want to kind of curve down towards the side, and it can be really easy to lose that first and last stitch of your row. So I like to often put a stitch marker in there to help make sure that I'm not picking up or losing any stitches. So helpful tip there. If you have a stitch marker, just place it in the top of that stitch there. So now we're going to do a pattern repeat that we're going to do all across our row 2 here. And we're going to yarn over and chain 1. Then we're going to skip a stitch and half double crochet into the next stitch. So again, skip that next stitch. We're working into the second stitch and half double crochet. All right, so this is what it should look like. You're going to create these little chain spaces that we're going to work into in the next row. All right, and we're going to do that again. Yarn over, chain 1, skip a stitch, and half double crochet into the next stitch. Okay, and then you can see we've got 2 chain spaces. So again, yarn over, chain 1, skip a stitch, and half double crochet into the next. And we're going to repeat this pattern all the way across our row. We'll chain 1, skip a stitch, and half double crochet into the next stitch. And we're just going to repeat that all the way across the row. Okay, so if you'd like to pause your video and do chain 1, skip 1, half double crochet until the end of the row, I'll meet you back here when I'm ready to start row 3 here. All right, so I'm back in, we're at the end of row 2 here. We're getting ready to move into row 3, and I've done the chain 1, and I'm about to skip my stitch here and work into this last stitch, but I forgot when we move into row 3, we're going to change colors. So we need to do something with our last stitch in order to change our colors. So when we're working our last stitch, we're going to yarn over and insert our hook under both loops. And then we're going to drop our old color, and then we're going to bring in the new color. When you bring in the new color, you can just lay the yarn over the hook like this, or because I'm on the video here and I find it more secure on the camera, I like to do a slip knot on my hook when I pull that new yarn through. So I'm going to pull that new color through the stitch and all the loops on my hook to complete this stitch. Now, at this point, you can cut your color A if you would like to. However, you will end up with multiple yarn ends to weave in. I'm going to show you here on the camera how to carry your yarn colors up. So if you just leave it hanging, you don't cut the yarn, then you'll be able to carry the yarn up the side of the project and you'll have less ends to weave in. So up to you and your personal preference, but I'm going to leave mine attached to show you how to carry your yarn up. And now when we're moving into row 3, we're going to continue now with color B. So we're going to chain up 1. So we've done that before. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and that's our chain 1. And then we're going to turn our work. So for row 3, we're going to start by working a back loop only single crochet into this first stitch. Now to find the back loop only, we're going to turn our work so that way we can see both V's at both strands of the V at the top of our stitch. So this one here is the front loop only, the one that's closest to you, and the one that's furthest from you is the back loop only. So to do that, we're going to insert a hook under the back loop only. Okay, I'll show you that again, up through the top of the stitch and under the back loop only. Then we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 2 loops on your hook. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through both loops to finish our single crochet stitch. All right, so now we're going to work a double crochet stitch into the stitch below the chain space. Now, when you take a look at your piece, let me get this yarn tail out of the way here so it's a little clear to see through under the chain space. So this space here is our chain space, and we want to work into the unworked stitch under the chain space. So we're going to start our stitch by doing a yarn over, we're going to start our double crochet with our yarn over, and then we're going to push that last row out of the way and insert our hook under both loops of this stitch. That's under the chain space. So I'll do that again. Yarn over. We're working under both loops of the chain space, or the stitch under the chain space. Then we're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the next 2 loops. All right. And now you can work around the chain space if you would like, but that is a different type of stitch. That's called a spike stitch, and you won't get the same effect in your fabric. Sure, you'll get the work done, but it won't look the same. All right. Now, when you work into the chain space or the stitch below the chain space, we're going to skip the stitch directly behind that. So if I pull this forward, there's an unworked stitch there. I'm going to skip it, and then I'm going to work my next stitch directly into this next stitch. So in that next stitch is a back loop only single. So again, find the back loop only up through the top of the stitch here and single crochet. All right. And then we're going to work another double crochet into the unworked stitch below the chain space. So yarn over. Again, we're going to move that last row out of the way so we can work under both loops of the stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. All right, and that's what your work should look like right now. And at the back, again, we're going to skip that stitch directly behind. and then we're going to work into the next stitch. Back loop only, so up through the top, back loop only, and single crochet. And this is the repeat that we're going to do across the row, and I'll show you that working into that unworked stitch below the chain space again. So we're going to yarn over, insert under both loops of that unworked stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. All right, so we are supposed to do this double crochet in the stitch below the chain space, and then back loop only, single crochet into the next one. And we're going to repeat this across our row all the way to the very last stitch. So if you'd like to pause your video and work that repeat of the double crochet into the stitch below the chain space and a back loop only single crochet, I'll meet you back here at the end of the row to show you how we're working in to row 4. So I just finished my last stitch of row 3. You should have finished on a back loop only single crochet, and we're moving into row 4. To start row 4, we're going to create a turning chain of 3. So we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. There's 1, yarn over and pull up a loop. There's 2, yarn over and pull up a loop. There's 3. And then we're going to turn our work. In this pattern, when we use a chain 3, it counts as our first stitch, which is a double crochet, and a chain 1 space. So when a pattern says that the chain counts as the first stitch, we're always going to skip the first stitch. We're not going to work into that stitch because there's already a stitch there, and that's our chain. And then we're going to skip the second stitch as well. And then we're going to double crochet into this third stitch. So I'm going to place my fingers right here next to the third stitch, and we're going to yarn over and insert our hook under both loops of that stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. And that's your first double crochet completed. And if you take a look and you pull the chain 2 or the second chain of the chain 3, you can see that we've created another one of those chain spaces. So now we're going to continue on with our yarn over and chain 1, and then we're going to skip a stitch, and then we're going to double crochet into the next stitch. So I'm going to put my fingers next to that stitch, yarn over, insert into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. And you can see again we've created another chain space there. So again we're going to yarn over and chain 1, skip a stitch, and then double crochet into this next stitch. So yarn over, insert into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. And we're going to repeat this pattern across our row. We're going to chain 1, skip 1, and then double crochet into the next stitch. All right, so we're going to continue this across the row to the very last stitch, chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet into the next stitch. So if you'd like to pause your video and continue to work this chain 1, skip 1, double crochet into the next stitch across the row, I'll meet you back here when we're going to do the very last stitch of the row before we move into row 5, because we're going to be changing colors. All right, so I'll meet you back here in just a moment. All right, we're here at the end of row 4. I've done my chain 1 and I'm about to skip this last stitch before my actual last stitch here. In the very last stitch here, we're going to be changing colors. So again, we need to start in the new or the current color before we change to the new color. So we're going to yarn over and insert our hook under both loops of that last stitch there. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over and pull through 2. And then this is where we're going to drop our old color. And if you still have your color 1 attached, we're just going to pick that up and very lightly bring it up to yarn over hook width. So we don't want it to be too tight when we're carrying it up. If you want to leave a tiny bit of slack, that's fine, because it will be hidden in the seam when we seam the ends of our headband together, but we don't want to pull it too tight because it will cause the fabric to cinch. Okay, so just very lightly yarn over and pull through both loops in the new color here, and you're ready to move on. Right, and again, you'll see that we have this strand of yarn here. That's totally fine. It will be hidden in the seam. So now we're moving into row 5. We're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. And I do want to mention that, again, you want to leave your second color still attached so we can carry it up the next time we use it. So we're moving into row 5 here, and we're going to work a single crochet into this very first stitch. So we're going to insert under both loops of that first stitch there, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and that's our first stitch completed. And now we're going to work a treble crochet into the unworked stitch here below the chain space. So to do a treble crochet, we're going to yarn over twice. So there's 1 and 2. I find it helpful to hold those yarn overs with my finger when I'm doing this next step. So I'm going to pull this last row out of the way so I can see both loops of that unworked stitch below the chain space, and I'm going to insert my hook under both loops of that stitch. Then we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. There should be 4 loops on your hook now. And we're going to yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2 one last time. And that's your treble crochet completed. And then, as we did in our previous row when we worked into those stitches below the chain space here, we skip the stitch directly behind it. So we're going to leave this stitch unworked. We're going to work our next stitch here into the next stitch. So we're going to insert under both loops of the next stitch and single crochet. All right. And now we're going to treble crochet into this unworked stitch below the chain space again. So again, yarn over twice, insert under both loops of that unworked stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2 again. Again, we're going to skip the stitch directly behind, and then we're going to single crochet into the next stitch. All right. And we'll do that together again. We're going to do that treble crochet into the unworked stitch below the chain space. So yarn over twice, insert under both loops of that unworked stitch, making sure that you're working in front of the row before the last row there. Yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. And so we're going to continue to work this treble crochet into the chain space, or the stitch below the chain space, followed by a single crochet into the next stitch. We're going to repeat this all the way across the row until there are 2 stitches remaining. So if you'd like to pause your video and meet me back here when there are 2 stitches left to be worked, I'll show you what we're going to do with those last 2 stitches. All right, so again, we're doing treble crochet in the stitch below the chain space, followed by single crochet in the next stitch. I'll meet you back here in just a moment. So I'm back here at the end of row 5. We have 2 stitches left to be worked, and we're going to work our treble crochet into that unworked stitch below the chain space here. And then when we're working our single crochet into the turning chain here, we want to take a look at our chain, and I find it helpful to turn it sideways so you can see the V's. And we've got 1, 2, and 3 V's. We want to work into this second V here of our turning chain. So I'm going to insert my hook through the center of the V. And we want to try to make sure that we pick up 2 strands when we insert our hook. Okay, I'll do that again, working into the V at the second chain. We want to do our best to try and get 2 strands. Let me turn it towards myself here to make it a little easier. It can be a little fiddly at first, right? But you can see here now that I've inserted my hook, I've got 2 strands of that gray because it'll just make it a more solid connection when you work your stitch. And then we're just going to work our single crochet as normal. Okay, and this is what it should look like at the end of row 5. Now, row 5, we're going to work into row 6 now. So we're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. And row 2 is row 6 is a repeat of row 2. And I'll quickly remind you what we did in row 2. So for row 2, we're going to half double crochet into that very first stitch here. Then we're going to yarn over and chain 1. We're going to skip 1 stitch, and then we're going to work a half double crochet into that very next stitch. So yarn over and half double crochet. All right, we're going to repeat that across our row. Once again, we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, and then half double crochet into the next stitch. We're going to repeat this all the way across the row. So if you'd like to pause your video and do chain 1, skip 1, and then half double crochet into the next stitch, I'll meet you back here at the end of the row to show you how we're moving into row 7. So I'm here at the end of row 6 and I have done my chain 1. I'm going to skip this stitch and then I'm going to work my last stitch here. And I wanted to show you because here my half double crochet has kind of pulled down to the side here. So this is where those stitch markers can really come in handy. But we're going to be changing colors moving into row 7. So we need to do this last stitch. So we're going to half double crochet into that last stitch. And then we're going to drop the old color and bring up the new color. And now this new color here, again, when we're carrying it up, we want to just lightly bring it up and yarn over. We don't want to pull it too tight. So if you need to add a little slack, you can pull down on your hands and hold some tension there while you pull that through your stitch to finish it. All right. And then we're moving into row 7. So row 7 is a repeat of row 3. So we're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. And just a reminder of what we did in row 3. For row 3, we work a back loop only in single crochet into that first stitch. So again, through the top of the stitch. Goodness, I did that one a little too tight. All right, the back loop only. And then we single crochet. And then we're going to work a double crochet into the unworked stitch below the chain space again. So yarn over, insert into the stitch underneath the chain space there, making sure not to work around the chain space. Yarn over, pull through 2, and pull through 2. All right, and then again, we're going to back loop only, single crochet into the next stitch, always making sure to skip the stitch directly behind that double crochet that we worked in under the chain space there. And then we're working that across the row. We're going to double crochet into the unworked stitch below the chain space, and then back loop only, single crochet into the next stitch. So if you'd like to pause your video and continue to work that double crochet under the chain space, followed by a back loop only, single crochet. I'll meet you back here in just a few moments to show you how we're moving into row 8. All right, so I just finished my last stitch of row 7 and we're moving into row 8. Row 8 is a repeat of row 4. So I'll quickly remind you what we did in row 4. And we're going to start with a chain of 3. So yarn over and pull through once, twice, and 3 times. Then we're going to turn our work. And a reminder that that chain 3 counts as our first stitch and a chain 1 space. So we're going to skip the first and second stitches and we're going to work into that 3rd stitch there. So I'm going to put my fingers next to that 3rd stitch and we're going to work a double crochet into that stitch. So yarn over through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. And that's what our first little bit of this row should look like. Then we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, and then we're going to double crochet into the next stitch. All right, so we're doing another one of those chain space rows, and we're going to repeat this pattern of chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet into the next stitch all the way across our row. So if you'd like to pause your video and work chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet into the next stitch, work it all the way across the row, and I'll meet you back here in just a moment. I'm going to be changing colors moving into row 9, so leave your last stitch unworked, and I'll meet you back here in just a moment to show you how we move into row 9. All right, so I'm at the end of row 8 here. I've done my chain 1. I'm going to skip this stitch here, and I've got my last stitch here I need to work into, but we're changing colors. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into that very last stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and then we're going to drop the current color and bring in the new color. And again, we're just going to carry that up to the new row. You don't want to do that too tight. I'm going to add a little tension here so that way I don't do it too tight. And then I've pulled that through the stitch and I'm ready to move on to row 9. So row 9 is a repeat of row 5, and I'll remind you what we did in row 5 here. So we're going to yarn over and chain up 1, and we're going to turn our work. So we start row 9 here with a single crochet worked into that very first stitch. And then we're going to work a treble crochet into that unworked stitch below the chain space. So we're going to yarn over twice into that stitch, remembering not to work around the chain space. And we're going to pull up a loop, pull through 2, pull through 2, and pull through 2. Don't forget to skip that stitch directly behind the treble, and then we're going to work a single crochet into the next stitch. And then we'll do a treble crochet into that unworked stitch under the chain space again. Pull through 2, pull through 2, and pull through 2. Then we'll single crochet into the next stitch. And we're going to work this repeat across our row, treble crochet into that unworked stitch below the chain space, followed by a single crochet into the next stitch. So if you'd like to pause your video and do this repeat of treble crochet followed by a single crochet across the row, I'll meet you back here at the end of the row to show you how we're moving into row 10. So I just wanted to pop back in as I'm about to do my last stitch of row 9 here and remind you that when you're finishing your row, you need to work your last stitch into the second chain of your turning chain. So again, I find it helpful to turn that chain towards me so I can see the V's. Sometimes you might need to use the tip of your hook there to get into that chain. I'm going to turn it this way. There we go. Again, it can be fiddly, but and then you just work your single crochet once you're into that chain and you're ready to move into row 10. Row 10 is a repeat of row 2. So we chain up 1 and we turn our work. And then again, a quick reminder of what we did in row 2. We're going to half double crochet into that very first stitch. Then we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, and then half double crochet into the next stitch. And we're going to repeat this pattern of chain 1, skip 1, and half double crochet into the next stitch all the way across our row. So if you'd like to pause your video and work chain 1, skip 1, and half double crochet all the way across your row, I'll meet you back here when we're about to work our last stitch, because we'll be changing colors as we move in to row 11. So I'll meet you back here in just a moment. All right, so I'm about to do my last stitch here of row 10, and for row 10 we're doing a half double crochet into that last stitch before we start to change our color. So we've yarned over, we're inserting into the stitch, then we're going to drop our old color and carry up the new. Again, remember not to hold that too tightly. Yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook to complete the stitch. And now we're ready to move into row 11. So we're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. So for row 11 is a repeat of row 3, and I'll quickly remind you of what we did in row 3. So for row 3, we work a back loop only single crochet into that first stitch. So I'm going to work up through the top of the stitch. Did that stitch a little too tight again. And then we're going to single crochet. And then we're going to double crochet into the unworked stitch below the chain space. So yarn over, insert under both loops of that unworked stitch, making sure we're not working around the chain space. And then we're going to double crochet. Then we'll skip the stitch behind. And then we are going to work a back loop only single crochet into the next stitch. So again, up through the top, picking up that back loop only and single crochet. And then we're going to work a double crochet again into that unworked stitch under the chain space. And then a back loop single into the next stitch. And we're going to repeat this pattern all the way across the row. Again, you're working that double crochet into that unworked stitch under the chain space, and then a back loop only single crochet into the next. So if you'd like to pause your video and work that repeat all the way across the row, I'll meet you back here at the end of the row to show you how we're moving into row 12. All right, so I just finished my last stitch here of row 11 and we're moving into row 12. Row 12 is a repeat of row 4, and I'll show you how we do that row again. So we'll start with a chain of 3. So yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through. So there's 3, and then we're going to turn our work. And again, that chain 3 counts as your first stitch and a chain 1 space. So we're going to skip the first and second stitches, and then we're going to work a double crochet into this third stitch here. So I'm going to put my fingers there and double crochet into that stitch. Okay, and again, if you'd like to help you find that second chain, put a stitch marker in it so you can find that later. Now we're going to do a chain 1, yarn over and chain 1. Then we're going to skip 1 stitch, and then we're going to double crochet into the next. So I'll put my fingers next to the stitch I want to work into and double crochet into that stitch. All right, for the rest of the row, we're going to do that chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet into the next stitch. We're going to do this all the way across our piece. And we'll be changing colors at the last stitch of the row. So if you'd like to pause your video and do chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet across the row, I'll meet you back here when we do our last stitch to change colors, moving into row 13. All right, so we're here at the end of row 12 and I have 1 stitch left to be worked. I've done my chain 1 and I'm skipping this stitch, but we're going to change colors in this last stitch here. So we're going to start our double crochet into that last stitch with our current color. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. And then at this point we drop the current color and bring in our new color. And again, we're just carrying that up the side. And we don't want to pull that too tightly, but yarn over in the new color and finish your stitch. Okay, and now we're ready to move on to row 13. Row 13 is a repeat of row 5, and we'll quickly cover how we did that again. So we'll yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. We start this row with a single crochet in the very first stitch. And then we're going to do a treble crochet in the unworked stitch below the chain space here. So again, we want to make sure that we're working under both loops of that stitch and not around the chain space. So you see I'm using my hook to push that last row back out of the way. And then we treble crochet. And then we single crochet in the very next stitch, skipping the stitch directly behind the treble crochet we just completed. So this right here is our skip stitch. And then we're going to repeat this across our row. We're going to do a treble crochet into this unworked stitch, followed by a single crochet. So treble crochet, then single crochet into the next stitch, treble crochet into that unworked stitch under the chain space, and a single crochet into the next. So if you'd like to pause your video and work that repeat all the way across the row, I'll meet you here at the end of the row to show you how we're moving into our last row, row 14. All right, so I just finished my last stitch of row 13, and if you might have forgotten here, just remember that you are working your last stitch of that row in the second chain of your turning chain from the previous row. And now we're moving into row 14. For row 14, we're going to start with a yarn over and chain up 1, and we're going to turn our work. For this row, we're just going to work 1 half double crochet into each stitch across. So we start with the very first stitch here, and then work 1 half double crochet into each stitch across. So if you'd like to pause your video and work 1 half double crochet into each stitch across, I'll meet you back here in just a few moments to show you how we're going to finish it off our headband and seam it together to create that nice twist in the front. So I just finished my last stitch of row 14 and I'm ready to finish off my headband. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a really long yarn tail in my main color here. I like to leave at least about 10 to 12 inches and then I'm going to cut my yarn. Then I will yarn over with my crochet hook with the main color and then pull that yarn tail all the way through to fasten off. If you haven't already done so, you can cut your color B or secondary color here and just leave a yarn tail long enough for you to weave in the ends later. Okay, so then we're ready to seam our headband together. You're going to need your tapestry needle here. I'm going to thread it onto my main color. Then we want to take our headband and turn it so the right side is facing us. So this here, it would be the right side of our fabric, and this is the wrong side of our fabric. If this is the side that you see, you need to turn it over because you need the right side facing you for this next step. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring the two short ends of our piece together, and we're going to fold the ends in half. And it's going to kind of look like a C shape, or like they're talking to each other. Okay. Then we're going to take one side and fit it inside the other. I'm going to pull my unwoven in yarn tails so they're onto the back of the fabric here. So when the piece gets sewn together, that they're on the inside and easier for me to weave in. All right. So now I've got my two sides sandwiched together, and then I'm going to take my yarn tail, which is this one here on the bottom, that is attached to my tapestry needle, and I'm going to work through all 4 layers of my fabric. I like to have them, make sure that they're really well lined up here at the ends. If it's not perfect, it's not a huge deal, but it's just my personal preference. There we go. And then we're going to take our yarn needle, and then we're going to work, again, working through all 4 pieces of fabric. We want to make sure we're catching them all when we go through from one side to the other. We're just going to whip stitch the 2 ends together. We want to make sure you're keeping as close to the edge as possible, because the further you go in to the fabric with your needle, the more fabric is taken up by the twist in your headband, and then it might alter the fit slightly depending on how far you bring your needle down into the fabric. So we're just going to keep working across from one end to the other. And now you can do this more than one time if you'd like. When you get to one end, you can sew to one end and then go back and do it a second time if you'd like, if you're worried about durability, because there is a lot of pressure that gets put on the twist in your headband. So it's, if you want to do it more than once, it's not a bad idea, especially if you aren't feeling super confident in your sewing skills. So here, I don't know if I'm catching that. There we go. All right, so I'm going to flip it to the right side so you can see what it looks like now. And there we go. We've got that really nice twist in the front. It looks great. And so I'm ready to completely fasten off here. So it's totally up to your personal preference, how you like to finish this off. You can either do a knot or you can weave it in. I always like to go for a knot or 2. Small knots are okay, especially if they're not going to be so large that they're pushing on your forehead when you wear it, because again, there's a lot of pressure being put on that twist every time you wear it, right? It's being pulled in opposite directions. So I am never going to say don't do a knot in this instance, because it's not going to hurt. Okay, so I'm just doing a little knot here. So I've done a small knot, and then what I'll do is I'll weave in my ends and do another knot somewhere else, and then weave in my ends completely. It's kind of as a double safe here. And then I'll weave in my rest of my ends, and I'm all set. And that is how you make our twist headband here. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please hit the like button and please consider subscribing to this channel. If you like free crochet patterns, please check out my blog, theloopylamb.com, where I've got over 200 free crochet patterns, and many of which have step-by-step video tutorials just like this one. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Happy hooking, and I'll see you next time.